All right, so let's get started. So welcome. We are so happy to have you join us this year for our 2022 Industrial Waste Customer Workshop. Today we have an agenda filled with many important regulatory updates and topics that we hope you find interesting and useful. So my name is Tina Nelson, and I am the Industrial Waste Manager. I will kick us off with a brief introduction of MCES and our pretreatment program, and then I will share some relevant federal, state, and local regulatory updates with you. Ned Smith, the Director of Pretreatment and Finance, will present MCES's budget to you, as well as our preliminary industrial rates for 2023.
Testing.
Steve Balog is back with us this year, and he is going to give you an update on COVID-19 monitoring at our wastewater treatment plants. We have Heidi Hutter and Chad Davison from our wastewater planning and capital delivery program, and they're going to talk a little bit about our capital program and our plans to build a new wastewater treatment plant in Hastings. Like other cities across the nation, MCES continues to see an increase in collection system issues due to the discharge of rags, fats, oils, and grease. Tim Rothstein and Isaac Razor will show us the effects of these items on our operations and share strategies to help you minimize your discharge of fog and rags to us. Our Water Efficiency Grant Program is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Brian Davis will share the regional benefits of the program, including how Clean Water Legacy funds used by the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program have resulted in significant water and waste savings in our region. Finally, we have Daniel Chang with us today from MnTap to talk about the services that they can provide businesses to help you save money and protect our environment. Before we begin, I wanted to briefly cover some meeting logistics with you. We are recording this workshop today, and we will post the recording on our website. This year, we are using Microsoft Teams as our virtual meeting venue. It works best in Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. If you have any audio or video issues during the meeting, simply exit and rejoin. That will usually solve the issue. If your issue remains, please add that you need some help to the chat window. We do have staff on hand who are here to help you. We will have multiple breaks today, so you can ask questions and offer feedback after presentations. Please add your questions or feedback to the chat, and our facilitator will be sure to get them addressed. You can also raise your hand to speak if you wish by clicking on the reactions item at the top of the window and selecting the hand. We ask that you please wait until you are called on to speak. All right, we have a big agenda, so let's get started. MCES owns and operates 9 wastewater treatment plants in the 7-county metropolitan area, and in doing so, we serve 111 communities and over 3 million people. Industrial Waste administers MCES's federally delegated pretreatment program. Our main objective is to ensure that industrial dischargers are complying with local and federal regulations and that industrial discharges do not negatively affect our collection system or wastewater treatment plants. Currently, we regulate about 850 dental clinics and over 930 different industrial users. Our authority comes from the Clean Water Act of 1972. The act called upon EPA to develop the National Pretreatment Program, as well as pretreatment standards to control industrial discharges into sanitary sewer systems. This program delegates the enforcement of those pretreatment standards down to local programs like MCES. It also allows us to develop our own local limits to protect our plants. We have had an approved pretreatment program since 1982. In our pretreatment program, we issue permits to our industrial users. Most of you in attendance hold either a standard, a special, or a general discharge permit. There are some differences between them. This table aims to summarize both the commonalities and the differences, most notably in the permit duration, reporting frequency, and sampling requirements. Over the past 10 years, we have moved certain industry types to general permits because they have less of an impact on our system, and their discharge can be managed easily by following best management practices. We currently issue general permits for hospitals, microbreweries, sewer cleaning waste haulers, water treatment plants, and categorical industrial users that do not discharge any processed wastewater to us. One big change this year is that we will be implementing a new low-impact standard discharge permit. This permit is intended to lower the regulatory burden for standard discharge permit holders who are not classified as a significant or categorical industrial user and are not expected to have a significant impact on our collection system and wastewater treatment plants. This new permit type will be effective for 5 years. The reporting frequency will be annual, and sampling will be required only during the first year of the 5-year permit cycle. If you qualify and your wastewater is strength chargeable, you will be assessed strength charge for the duration of the permit based on that first year of analytical results. This permit type will carry a lower fee. It will be $8.25 in 2022. Finally, MCES will continue to inspect and monitor these facilities at least once during the permit cycle. There are some eligibility criteria for the new low-impact standard permit. First, the industrial user must not be classified as an SIU or a CIU. The average total facility discharge volume must be less than 25,000 gallons per day, and the average strength charge must be less than $1,000 per year. The concentrations of all metals must be less than 25% of the corresponding local limit, and pH must not be a concern. The industrial user also cannot rely on a significant pretreatment system prior to discharging to MCES. And finally, an industry must have a strong history of compliance. So we will be rolling out this new permit type this spring in the next couple months. We are using data from the last 3 years to see who is eligible. So next year, those who are eligible will be notified and will be invoiced a lower annual permit fee. After that, our permit staff will be working on amending and reissuing those permits. Once they are reissued, your reporting requirements in the online reporting system will be updated. So those who qualify and are currently on a semi-annual reporting status, you will not be required to submit your January-June 2022 self-monitoring report. And if you already have done your monitoring for the year, you will be able to submit that with your annual report that will be due in January. All right, so we have the new permit type. Last year, we conducted another study of our local limits to determine if our current limits are protective of our collection system and wastewater treatment plants. The study concluded that they are protective and no changes are needed to our local pretreatment standards at this time. So no limits are decreasing and we are not adding limits for new parameters. We did identify several pollutants that need to be studied further and included in our 2026 local limits study. We will be focusing on mercury point source reduction. We plan to resume site checks at dental clinics so we can educate them on the proper use of their separator. Site checks have been on hold since the start of the pandemic. We will study ammonia, sulfate, and aluminum in our collection system to determine if there are industrial sources that can be reduced. And we will continue to study chloride potential reduction strategies, as well as we will be performing PFAS source identification and reduction work, which I will speak a lot to in a couple slides. On the federal landscape, EPA published its preliminary effluent limits guideline Plan 15 last fall. They have identified several point source categories that they are working on. They completed a study of the meat and poultry products point source category, but that does not affect any industrial users who discharge to a wastewater treatment plant. They are proposing a supplemental rule for the steam electric power generating facilities this fall, It will strengthen certain discharge limits for facilities who discharge flue gas desulfurization wastewater due to better available treatment technologies. They are currently revising the organic chemicals, plastics, and synthetic fiber category to address PFAS manufacturers. None of our industrial users, permitted ones, are subject to this category manufacture PFAS, so the revision should not affect them. They are, however, initiating a revision of the metal finishing point source category to address PFAS from chrome plating facilities. This revision will affect some of our industrial users. And lastly, they are beginning to study PFAS from landfills, textile mills, and carpet manufacturers. This is in the study phase, not in initiating a rule or limits phase. So they're just studying at this point. When we take a look at the state landscape, many of you are likely aware that MPCA issued its PFAS monitoring plan last month. The plan has 3 goals and objectives. The first is to gather data to help them craft policies around PFAS and how to incorporate them into existing programs. They want to identify areas of concern that need quick action. And they're also looking to data to support source reduction and pollution prevention activities. MCES was notified that 5 of our 9 wastewater treatment plants will be included in the wastewater monitoring plan. Those plants are Rogers, East Bethel, Seneca, Blue Lake, and Hastings. Our largest plant, Metropolitan in St. Paul, will be subject to the air monitoring plan. Of our 4 remaining plants, which are Metropolitan, Empire, Eagles Point, and St. Croix Valley, they will not be covered by the wastewater monitoring plan. Those 4 plants all discharge effluent into a water body that MPCA has listed or has proposed to list as an impaired body for PFOS. These facilities will go through a permit-based NPDES process to address PFAS. So there was a kickoff meeting yesterday with MPCA and they shared their timeline. Facilities subject to the wastewater monitoring plan will conduct influent sampling in quarters 1 and 2 of 2023. The next following 6 months, facilities will then be conducting source identification and reduction work and hoping to reduce those sources. Then in quarters 1 and 2 of 2024, 2 more samples will be taken to determine the effectiveness of that source reduction work. MPCA will be using those first 2 quarters of influent sampling data to determine which municipal wastewater treatment plants are in the high, medium, and low priority response threshold groups. And future source reduction activities will then be determined for each group. It is anticipated that there will be future phases of the monitoring plan that will expand to sampling for PFAS in our effluent and our biosolids. They also plan to develop guidance materials to help municipal wastewater treatment plants look for PFAS sources and reduce them in their influent. At this time, we are still developing our response to the monitoring plan. There are 91 wastewater treatment plants subject to the plan, so it will be very important that we all use the same methods for sample collection and analysis, as the data will be used by MPCA to develop future phases of the monitoring plan. In conjunction, we will be monitoring the development and approval of EPA method 1633, which is the analytical method designed to measure PFAS in wastewater. EPA is hoping to have that method approved by the end of this year. We know that the easiest and most cost-effective way to control PFAS in our influent is to prevent it from coming into our plants in the first place. So we will be focusing heavily on source identification and reduction work. We plan to have an intern this summer dedicated to studying various industry types, such as carpet cleaners and car washes and other known or suspected sources of PFAS in our influent. We also plan to develop a survey to help industrial users identify PFAS in their raw materials. Once developed, we commit to meeting with our affected industrial users to inform them of our response. Currently, there is no plan to require industrial users to start PFAS monitoring unless you are already required to do so in your permit. We also do not have enough data to calculate a technically derived local limit for any PFAS compound. So part of our actions will be developing a multi-year PFAS sampling plan to study known and suspected sources once EPA approves an analytical method for wastewater. All right, we've got a couple more slides and then we'll have a Q&A break. You all have been using our online reporting system for a few years now, and our support team has asked me to share a few tips that will help you navigate your dashboard better. So after you log on, you will be in the My Dashboard tab. This is the best place to access all of your upcoming submittals. When you do need to manage your password PIN or security questions and answers, you can do so by clicking on the My Account tab in the upper left-hand corner. All of your upcoming submittals are in the center of your dashboard. There is a table, and it displays when each submittal is due and its status. When you are ready to start your submittal, you simply click on the Edit button. Your dashboard provides easy ways for you to access past submissions or submissions in progress, to access submissions currently in progress, including any revisions that were requested of you by your engineer. Click on the View All Pending Submittals button. To view past submissions made in the system, click on the View All Historical Submittals button. We have a dedicated website with lots of training materials and videos designed to help you learn how to use the system and make your submittals. They are organized by permit type. We also have several starter Excel templates for uploading your analytical data into the sampling results SMR. If you're someone who prefers to get help from a live person, we do have our iOS support team, and they are available by phone or email Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. They do provide individual training sessions upon requests. I encourage you to use this resource. And I know that there has been a lot of turnover in our facility contacts over the past 2 years. If you have a question regarding your permit and what is required of you as far as monitoring or reporting, the best person is to contact your permit engineer. With tools like Microsoft Teams, it is easy to connect with your permit engineer on a video call. You can also request that they visit you at your facility as well. We use several methods of communication or to communicate important information with you throughout the year. Most will come by email, either from your permit engineer or the Gov Delivery messaging service. Please ensure that you can receive our Gov Delivery messages, as some email servers will filter them into your junk or clutter folders. We also share program information in our open channel news publication twice a year. Our newest issue was published last week. It's full of lots of great information, and we hope that you get a chance to read it. We have also published our 2021 Environmental Services Performance Report, which highlights our accomplishments last year, including how we continued to deliver uninterrupted wastewater service despite the pandemic, along with many other great achievements. MCES has a long history of compliance at our wastewater treatment plants, and we are very proud of it. In 2020, we received NACWA Platinum Awards for 6 of our 9 plants. For our remaining plants, 2 received a Gold Award and 1 received a Silver Award. 2 of our plants, Hastings and St. Croix Valley, are among those with the longest running compliance history, with only 2 other plants in the country having longer records. In total, our plants have 117 years of perfect performance for clean water. So I wanted to wrap up today with a quick COVID update. We have learned to adapt quickly and adjust over the last 2 years. This week, we opened all of our offices to the public, and we have resumed unannounced monitoring at our permitted industrial users. We currently do not mandate that masks be worn in our facilities, but of course, we encourage everyone to practice social distancing and to stay home when they feel ill. We will adhere to your mask policy when we are at your facility, and we do have some staff who will choose to wear a mask when they're out at your place. We continue to ask you to notify us when one of your employees tests positive for COVID-19 and has had contact with our staff. We will always take COVID-19 very seriously and follow all public health guidance issued by the state of Minnesota. So I'd like to thank you all for being flexible with how we inspected and monitored your facilities over the past 2 years. Your collaboration helped us continue to meet our pretreatment program requirements while minimizing the spread of COVID-19 within our own workforce. And that in turn enabled MCES to provide the uninterrupted treatment of nearly 250 million gallons of wastewater each and every day in our region throughout the pandemic. All right, we've come up to our first break period. Nanette, do you have any questions in the chat?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Nanette Ewald. I am the program coordinator here in Industrial Waste, and periodically throughout this workshop, I will be stopping for questions and answers or questions and comments. If anybody has any questions or comments at this time, feel free to raise your hand and I will call on you. Or if you have a question you want to put it in the chat, you could do so now. Well, I'm not seeing anybody, so we can move on. Ned, I'm going to turn it over to you, so you can take us through the budget and rates.
Thanks, Nanette.
Oh, we do. I'm sorry. We do have a hand up. I see a hand. Ned, before you go, Nicole Lancaster. She has a question. Nicole.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was following it correctly. So Martina, thank you for the information that you just gave. But in regards to that PFAS updates, so if I understand that correctly, so you guys would, in return to those, I think you said there was 4 or 5 facilities on the MCS side that you guys would end up getting PFAS testing requirements, and then would you be potentially pushing those on to other companies that have industrial wastewater permits with you, or how would that work down the line as far as companies that are permitted through you guys with PFAS?
So at this point, we're still crafting our strategy so that those samples are of our influence. So it's 2 grab samples, one in the first quarter of 2023, one in the second quarter, and that is just of our influent of those 5 plants. And we give that data to MPCA, and they'll be developing those response thresholds and grouping facilities in different priority buckets and having them work on source reduction at this point. So I really can't say, I mean, at some point, I would imagine that industrial users might be asked to sample for PFAS, but I think we're a ways out from that. And again,
Perfect.
We have some people are required by their permit to sample for PFAS now, mostly like known sources, people who use PFAS and their their fume suppression baths as a chrome plater, or our landfill leachates are also required to do so.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds like we're still in the collection phases of a lot of this anyways, so appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So Tina, a question came in the chat. What are the most common sources of PFAS?
Well, PFAS is used in a lot of applications. I think, you know, historically in the chrome plating industry, it was used as a fire in the fume suppression baths. It's also in aqueous, AFFF, so firefighting foam. It's used in those things, but it's also in a lot of consumer goods, and that's why we see it in landfill leachate. So there's a lot of coatings on things like the advantage of the PFAS compounds is that it repels both oil and water. So it's on a lot of food packaging, printed items, it's in your bedding and textiles and carpet. So there's just a lot of different sources of PFAS. And does that answer your question?
David? Yes. Yeah, it looks like it does.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. Anyone else before we move on? Anyone else have a question they'd like to ask Tina or? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. On to you, Ned. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nanette. And when we went back to question and answer, I lost the take control. In fact, I'm looking at a frozen Tina. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Is everyone else looking at the presentation?
Yes, it's on the finance and budget screen.
Okay.
You want me to
I
advance
don't.
it for you, Ned?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I can't even see it. Oh, wait, something's happening. Okay, here we go. Now I can take. Let me make sure it pops up, and then I'll take control. Nope, I lost it again. I'm so sorry, folks. Right now I just see people.
I don't know.
Something up. Yeah, there's others that can't see the presentation right now.
All right. I'm resharing the presentation, Ned.
That sounds good. Oh, and now here it comes back, and
Yeah, Tina's
I'm
gonna
gonna
reshare it.
take
for us.
control. Okay, and we are back at slide 1. So those of you who joined us late, lucky for you, you're going to hear it all over again. Just kidding. Let's see if I can.
We should be at slide 24, Ned.
Yes. I am not on the best connection here. Apologize for the delay. Okay. Yes, finance and budget. There we are. And mine is still tiny, so I'm going to have to do that until it grows. Hopefully it will. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Just want to give a quick finance update, kind of provide an overview for where our money comes from, where it goes, and a brief peek at our proposed rates for 2023. And I'll walk through the timing on that in a minute. So our 2023 budget is not set in stone yet. In fact, we just kind of put the last details on it about 4 days ago. And so we have not had a chance to share it with the Environment Committee. So we don't really have everything all tied up, but we do have some estimates for what that impact is for your 2023 rates. But since we can't really share the 2023 overall, we're going to show 2022 again, and I can tell you the pie charts look about exactly the same. So for just revenue, important couple reminders. One is we are a fee-for-service agency. We do not receive any state or federal funds, nor do we receive any money from the council. And likewise, any money that we receive can't be used for the rest of the council. So the rest of the council is our transit agency, our housing, our parks. We have what I like to call financial firewalls between environmental services and the rest of the council. We do receive some money for pass-through grants, but in terms of operations and debt service and all those, that is all walled off from the rest of the council. So you can see here, the biggest source of our revenue is our municipal wastewater charges. We are, as was mentioned earlier, we're a wholesaler to 111 customer communities that we provide collection and treatment services for. So that's the money that we charge them. They, in turn, include that in a sewer bill that's passed on to customers. We're about 55 to 60% of a municipality's wastewater bill that comes out to a resident or to a business. The rest is their portion that they charge for maintenance of their collection system. You can see our transfer from SAC, so I'll talk about that a little bit later, but sewer availability charge is a good source for revenue for us, about 18%. Short story is that's the charge for connecting or expanding your use of the system, and we'll get into some details in a minute. And then industrial waste charges, that's where this form's all about. That's 5% of our revenue. That's for our permitting and also our strength and other charges that we charge to industrial customers. And then other varies from year to year. It can include pass-throughs for grants like inflow and infiltration, or for water efficiency that we get from other sources, but those are dollar for dollar. Whatever we get, we spend. Tracy says he's no longer, James Tracy says he's no longer seeing one. How's everyone else doing?
Can see you. Everything's.
Okay. All right. I see some thumbs up. So hopefully, and Maggie's got them. So hopefully, James' system will catch up. Great. Thank you for that. So uses, this is where all the money goes. You can see the biggest chunk there is debt service at 47%. That's basically our mortgage payment. When we do major capital works, we take out loans. We have wonderful terms of our loans. They're always 20 years. They're fixed. In the last couple of years, they were down in the 1 to 1.5% range. We just did a debt offering 3 weeks ago, when we got 3.25%, which we were pretty happy with. So those are our mortgage payments that we pay throughout the year, throughout the life of the bonds. And then our next biggest investment is our people, salaries and benefits at 23%. We are still pretty much half of the employees that we had back in the 90s. So we are always looking for efficiency and trying to keep that at a minimum, but we also are always looking to make sure we're operating at the optimal performance levels for our plants. And so we do want to make those necessary investments. The rest are pretty evenly balanced. I'll just comment on interdivisional services. That's kind of our headquarters. That's what we call regional administration, but that's our centralized services for things like HR and finance and IT. And IT is the biggest component of that interdivisional charge. And then the rest are pretty standard. And I'll talk a little bit more about some trends we're seeing in some of those when we get to your rates. So preliminary strength charges and permit fees, and again, this is you can see on the column there. This is for 2023, but just a reminder, what are those strengths? Is we acknowledge that the strength coming out of industrial customers is stronger and takes more resources to treat than what comes out of a home. And so this we break down to figure out what are those components. And the two primary ones are chemical oxygen demand and total suspended solids. And we take measures of those, and that's how we determine if there needs to be a strength or a COD or a TSS charge. And then we base that charge on the discharge volume and any excess that comes through that. We do bill our permit fees annually, but your strength charges depends on your business and the size. It can be annual, it can be semi-annual, or it can be quarterly. And if you have any questions about that, ask your permit engineer. So you can see that we've got a pretty big bump for 2023. Our municipal wastewater charge is going to be in the 5 to 5.5% increase neighborhood, and that is driven by inflation, as everyone knows. And for us specifically, we are seeing considerable inflation in our chemicals and in our utilities, 25, 30, 40% increases in what it costs. And our chemicals are the chemicals we use to either treat at the plant or also for odor control, and also some dewatering and things that we do there. Those are all pretty extensive parts of our budgets, and they are going up considerably in price. And also utilities, we're seeing especially, well, not even especially, it's across the board, but that's primarily in our gas, natural gas, and our electricity. Our permit fee is lockstep with our municipal wastewater charge, so that is the piece there. The reason that TSS and COD is a little bit higher than what the proposed municipal wastewater charge is because we break down the COD and the TSS to only include things that are relevant to that treatment, which basically means we remove the interceptor costs, because generally it doesn't cost our interceptors anymore to transport high strength waste, but it does cost us more at the plants. And as I mentioned, the two things that I talked about inflation were chemicals and utilities, and those are most strongly used at our plants and not in the interceptor. So if you pull out interceptor, it's going to cause your plants and your utilities to go up a little bit higher. And then our permit fee for our generals will stay the same. That's because we've found that the marketing and printing costs to increase it is actually less than the revenue gain that we would have if we raised the price. So we'll keep those there. Service availability charge, that's our connection fee. It pays for the capacity in the system. If you either connect first or if you expand your use. We do charge that directly to local governments for initial connections. And then those governments pass it on to the end users, which is you folks. It's based on the discharge of a typical household, which is 274 gallons a day, or the maximum discharge from a house. And then, of course, a business will go through our SAC determination letter process to determine how many SAC units are due. And we use SAC as a tool. We call it generational equity. If we build a pipe, we build it bigger than we need it, but we put it on financing so that future users will pay for it rather than current users. And that's what's baked into the SAC charge. We are thrilled to announce, though, that it'll stay flat, $2,485. We haven't raised that since January of 2014. And we've seen great development in the region. And so that is keeping our SAC healthy. An alternative to SAC is the industrial capacity charge. This is a choice you can make when you first get your industrial SAC bill. So we charge for commercial SAC, which is the SAC for the building, and then industrial SAC, which is the SAC for the discharge, for the process discharge. And that you can choose to either buy all your units up front, or you can buy a minimum of 3 and then kind of pay as you go. It's like a rent, and it is not rent to own. It is just rent, much like an apartment. And that's going to go up just a bit. That's driven by a lot of factors, including our expenses, but also the flows that we see. And you can see it's just up 1.8%, and that is $2.25 per 1,000 gallons. So it's based on flow. We use that as a proxy for the capacity that's demanded. And that is all I have. And so with that, I will be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Ned. So I'm going to pause and look for some hands, see if I see any questions in the chat. Ned, I did get a question. What were the impacts of COVID on MCS finances the past 2 years?
There are 2 answers. The short answer is none. But the longer answer is a little bit, so first of all, let's do none. Well, let's even back up. So in 2020, when we set our 2021 budget, there was a lot of, and we built our budget in March of 2020. So that's when everything started, all of the shutdowns. And there was dire predictions that cities would, go bankrupt because commerce would shut down. And so we wanted to be sensitive to that. So we set our municipal wastewater charge increase at only 2%. Which really wasn't enough, but we wanted to do what we could to help out the cities. And so 2 things happened with that, which is kind of the overall impact, is the cities were very healthy. And so we are thrilled to report that for 2021, we just closed the books, not a single city missed a single dime of their payments. Everybody was on time. Everybody met their payments in full. The same was true for industrial waste. We saw continued healthy revenue from industrial waste. And so there really wasn't any decline. The longer term impact is that means that's a year that we only charge 2%. So we will not be anniversarying whatever money we collected in 2021 in future years. So that's another part of the reason why we're going to have to go a little higher with our municipal wastewater charge this year, because we need to collect some of that money back.
Great, thanks, Ned. Does anyone else have any questions for either Tina or Ned? All right, I am not seeing any.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Ned. I'm going to turn
you.
it over to Steve, and he's going to take us over through the COVID-19 in our wastewater.
Okay, thank you, Nanette. Good morning, everybody. I'll advance this here. So my name is Stephen Balog, and I'm a principal research scientist and chemical engineer at Metropolitan Council Environmental Services. And I'm going to be talking about our project to monitor SARS-CoV-2 in our wastewater at the Metro plant. Some of you may have heard about this project last year at this workshop, and I'll just basically be giving an overview again and an update on that on this project. The project that I'll be talking about is it's a partnership between Met Council and the University of Minnesota Genomics Center, and the names of the people who are involved in the project are shown here on the slide. So what are we doing? We're monitoring for the virus that causes COVID-19 disease, and we're monitoring for it in the wastewater coming into our treatment plants, and specifically I'll be speaking about the Metro plant today. We know that the virus is shed in the stool of infected individuals. Not all infected individuals will shed it. Their stool, about approximately 50% of the people will. And it seems to correlate pretty well with people who have gastrointestinal symptoms, not just the respiratory symptoms. That waste is, of course, flushed into the wastewater collection system, and then it will appear, the signal for this virus will appear in the wastewater long before, maybe several days even, before any clinical testing results are available to tell us that, oh, there's virus and disease in the community. And the virus levels in the wastewater will increase when infections in the community are increasing, and the virus levels will decrease when they're decreasing. So the wastewater collects the viral RNA from infected individuals, whether they are symptomatic or asymptomatic, whether they are tested or untested, and whether they're seeking healthcare or not. So it gets a pretty comprehensive and objective picture of what the prevalence of the disease is in the community. So what we're doing is at the Metro plant, we collect a daily 24-hour composite sample of our influent. We homogenize that sample. We treat the wastewater with a little bit of what's called Zymo DNA RNA shield. It's a stabilization and lysis buffer that basically breaks up the virus particles that may be in the wastewater, and it stabilizes the RNA that we're looking for. Mix that well and incubate it for about 90 minutes, and then we extract the viral RNA from that sample. To do that, we use what's called a Zymo 3P column, and we run the sample along with some 100% ethanol through the 3P column. This is a silica column, so when the RNA in our sample gets into the column, it attaches to the silica in the column, and it sticks basically and stays there, and the rest of the junk flows through. And then we wash the residual junk off the column, and we elute the RNA in 200 microliters of a elution buffer. And then we take that 200 microliters and we run that through a second column, a smaller column, which is also a silica column, and basically do the same thing again, but it's a smaller column, so we can elute it with a smaller volume of water, and just 20 microliters in this case. So what we've done is we've basically gone from our original sample, which was 3 milliliters of wastewater, down to having all of the viral RNA in just a tiny little teardrop sample of 20 microliters of pure water. And what we do with that is we take it over to the University of Minnesota Genomics Center, and they do something called droplet digital PCR. And what that is we're looking for specific fragments of the viral RNA that is in our sample. And these fragments that we're looking for, in this case, we look for the N1 and the N2 N2 fragments on the nucleocapsid gene. And so that will give us basically the total amount of viral RNA in our sample. And then we're also running targeted mutation assays looking for the K417N, L452R, and the HV6970 deletion or mutations, and those tell us what variants are actually in our sample. So we can distinguish between the different variants of concern that are circulating in the community by looking at the wastewater and measuring these specific mutations. And then we get the data back from the Genomics Center within 48 hours, and we report it to the Department of Health the next day, basically. And we also report it to the governor's office. And we sit on a bi-weekly meeting with the Minnesota Department of Health. They have an early warnings system team where we talk about our data and try to help them determine if there's going to be an increase coming or what the variants are doing in terms of changes. So this is a look at some of our data, and basically the gray bars plotted on the left show the clinical case numbers reported by the Minnesota Department of Health, and the red dotted line is plotted on the right, and that shows the load or the total amount of this viral RNA coming into the Metro plant over time since we started our work, which was actually in November of 2020. And so what you can see basically is that there's very good correlation between the case data reported by the Department of Health and the levels of the virus that we're seeing in the wastewater in the metro area. And we have a dashboard, and that dashboard URL is shown at the bottom of this slide. And on that dashboard, you can go there and it's updated weekly. You can see a slide like this, a figure like this that shows the different variants that are in the wastewater over time. And currently we're tracking the BA2 Omicron variant. And just this week, we initiated another assay looking for a new BA2. It's a BA2.12.1, which is apparently taking over in a lot of communities in the US. And it's already here in the metro area, we know from the clinical testing. And so we will be tracking that over time in the next few weeks. And so I encourage you to have a look at our dashboard. Again, it's updated every week on a Friday around noon, and you can see what's going on in your community right there. So in summary, we can accurately measure the SARS-CoV-2 RNA concentrations in the wastewater entering our treatment plants. The RNA concentrations and loads track very well with the clinical COVID-19 case counts reported by the Department of Health over time. This data is useful to the public health authorities, and they're especially interested in both the variant information as well as it's really good now that there isn't as much clinical testing going on because they're kind of flying blind in terms of having enough data to make decisions. So the wastewater signal is really important for understanding what's happening when case numbers are low. And we can monitor the variants of the virus that are circulating in the community and hopefully provide early warning of their presence and prevalence to the decision makers at the Department of Health and in the governor's office. And so with that, I believe I have come to the end, and I'll take any questions.
Great. Thanks, Steve. One question did come in the chat. Do you track RNA that is used in vaccinations?
Now, that doesn't really make it through a person's system as we understand it. I mean, it would be a very, very small signal if it was there. So no, we don't see that. We just see what's coming from somebody's infection. Thanks,
Steve. One more question. You'd mentioned that you meet with the Minnesota Department of Health biweekly and give them your data. What do they do with your data?
Well, it's a bit of a black box, of course. You don't really know what another agency is necessarily doing, but uh, initially they were very interested in the variant data back last summer when we first were talking with them. They were very interested in what different variants were circulating. But as I mentioned, over time now, as recently the cases have been very low and the case data has been going away, the testing has been going away, they're interested in just seeing the total load coming into the plant as an indicator of whether things are starting to increase or coming down as they did in January from Omicron. So they are using the data along with modeling data now to really track what's happening when testing numbers are much lower than they were.
Thanks. Another question came through the chat. Can the procedures also identify new variants or just those that we are already aware of?
Yeah, this procedure requires us to know something about the variant of concern that we're looking for. We need to know what the distinguishing mutation is. And so we need to develop an assay then that will look for that particular mutation. And companies like Thermo Fisher or Bio-Rad are producing these types of mutation assays as things pop up. But we can't see something that hasn't been seen anywhere else. But if you think about it, I mean, the odds of, the next big variant of concern showing up in Minnesota and St. Paul, it's pretty small. And so, when Omicron blew up in South Africa, we immediately got on the job and said, okay, how can we distinguish Omicron? We found the right assay to look for the mutation in that case, and so we were ready, but no, we can't see things that haven't already been seen elsewhere.
Thank you. One more question. What disposal methods are used for the equipment and byproducts that is used in the extraction process of the wastewater?
In the extraction process, that just goes down the drain. Basically, these are basic lab chemicals. The wash buffer is just kind of a salt solution, basically, and the lysis buffer has some guanidinium thiocyanate in it. It's these are things that are easily biodegraded, so they just go down the drain, basically.
Great, thanks, Steve. Does anyone else have any questions for Steve? I'm not seeing any hands, and I haven't received any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to turn it over to Chad and Heidi.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Ned. Take control. Looks like I got control. Hi, my name is Chad Davison. I work in the Interceptor Engineering Group for Met Council, manage projects for rehabbing our system and expanding it. So the MCS wastewater collection system consists of approximately 640 miles of regional center sewers. Interesting fact, about 50% of the state's population is served by MCS through our wastewater treatment plants and sewers. As you can see, it's a fairly large system, many lift stations and meters. MCS is continually upgrading and repairing this very large system. We have an extensive inspection program which determines portions of the system that need repair. This slide shows 16 planned projects for the year 2022. Some of these projects have already opened bids and begun construction. See, these projects are located all over the 7-county metro area. This map of the 7-county Twin Cities metropolitan area shows our wastewater service area and the regional wastewater treatment facilities. The color shading on the map shows the areas we serve, which is basically the urban and suburban portions of the metro area. Each color shaded corresponds to each of the 9 wastewater treatment plants in the area they serve. 9 plants combined treated approximately 250 million gallons of wastewater each day. 8 of the 9 treatment plants discharge their resulting clean water to the Mississippi River, St. Croix River, and East Bethel facility disposes its highly treated discharge through rapid infiltration basins, which augment the shallow groundwater table. Table in the lower right-hand corner of this slide identifies the wastewater treatment plant service area with major construction projects planned through 2027. Capital projects fall into at least one of 3 categories: preserving assets, expansion to meet capacity needs in service area, and or improving quality of service based on more stringent regulations, reusing wastewater, increasing system reliability, and conserving and generated energy. When we develop our capital program, finance and wastewater planning and capital project delivery teams work together to balance our identified needs with the impact to our rates. We look at our history of spending, inflation, and the timing of our large projects. Our goal typically is to spend between 80 to 85% of our planned program, which gives us some flexibility in the project's priority change due to needs in one of the infrastructure partners, or if project slips a bit on schedule. In the next several years, you see the cash flow is estimated at 227 to 243 million. And that reflects our large projects in our portfolio. Solids management expansion at the Metro plant, the new L32 lift station, the Crow River plant, and the Hastings plant, which is over here to discuss today. I'm going to hand it over to Heidi. She's going to take control and take you through the first part of our Hastings presentation.
Thanks, Chad. I'm Heidi Hutter. I'm a principal engineer in the plant engineering group, and I'm working with Chad to relocate the Hastings wastewater treatment plant. The Hastings wastewater treatment plant has 30 years of perfect permit compliance, and that's something that we are very proud of. Each year, the plant has received the National Association of Clean Water Agencies Peak Performance Award, and that's for 100% permit compliance. There are only 2 other facilities in the country with better performance, as Tina mentioned earlier. Those are the City of Ames Water and Pollution Control Department in Iowa and the Hanover Sewerage Authority in New Jersey. The plant is located in downtown Hastings, and it has limited room for expansion. The site is bound by the Mississippi River and city roadways. Just outside of this photo, to the bottom and right, is a residential area that you can't quite see. The existing plant was constructed in 1952 by the City of Hastings, and it was acquired by MCES in 1970. The plant's last expansion was in 1985, which brought it to its current capacity of 2.3 million gallons per day. A recent condition assessment was conducted in 2020, and it identified the need for major renewal at the Hastings plant in order to continue reliable service through 2040. The estimated cost of that renewal work alone, which would be required to extend the service life of the plant, is $26 million. The project would not include any capacity expansions, nor would it address any changes in regulatory requirements. We then initiated additional planning activities and evaluations, which resulted in a facility plan that recommended construction of a new wastewater treatment plant 2024 through 2026. Relocation of the Hastings wastewater treatment plant is really driven by 3 main elements. The first element is growth. The Hastings treatment plant is projected to exceed its existing capacity of 2.34 MGD in 2050 due to growth that's occurring within the service area. The second element is the ability to meet future potential regulatory requirements. In addition to capacity that you need for growth, additional treatment capacity would be required to meet future environmental regulations for total nitrogen, which we anticipate to see come to us within this planning period. The third element is really the need to make significant investments in the existing facility. That condition assessment that I mentioned indicates that we have a need for significant investment in a site that can no longer meet the needs of our long-term service area. So in lieu of continuing investment in that site, what we will do is relocate the facility and we'll perform a very modest renewal project at the existing site in order to continue reliable service through commissioning of our new plant. So just enough work to get us through the construction and relocation of our facility. The new wastewater treatment plant will be relocated, located about 2 miles southeast of the existing plant site onto 221 acres of MCES owned property that's located in Hastings and Ravenna Township. The overall program cost for relocation of the plant is $165 million. There are 3 main work areas that are required to relocate the facility. First is a new lift station, force main, and a gravity sewer that would be needed to transport wastewater to the new plant site. That work is slated to be delivered via design bid build, and work would occur 2024 through 2026. That work would then commission just prior to startup of the new wastewater treatment plant. The estimated cost of that portion of the work is $23 million. The second element is a new wastewater treatment plant and an outfall to the Mississippi River. That work will be delivered via the design build process, and it's anticipated to occur 2024 through 2026. The design build process really requires the design builder to certify that plant process performance, and it keeps responsibility for performance with them until the council accepts it. So we would expect at least 1 year of commissioning and process proving by that design build team to begin in 2027. The estimated cost of that work is about $139 million. The third element is in that following successful commissioning of the new plant, the existing plant would then be decommissioned and the land would be returned to the city of Hastings for redevelopment. Decommissioning is anticipated to begin about 2028, and the estimated cost of that work is about $3 million. There is a modest renewal project, as I mentioned, underway at the current treatment plant, and that's just to maintain reliable operations until the new plant is commissioned. That work includes rehabilitation of some aeration tanks, mechanical HVAC work, and some site security improvements to the new treatment plant, and that work is anticipated to start this summer. Shown here is a site layout that depicts the recommended wastewater treatment plant. The dark shapes depict infrastructure that's required for initial construction of the facility, and the empty shapes depict infrastructure that's required to meet our 10 MGD ultimate planned capacity for the service area. Relocation of a British Petroleum pipeline to the boundary allows us to site the new facility on about 10 acres of natural high ground that's located in the southwest corner of the property. The facility would be located in the city of Hastings with no treatment plant infrastructure constructed in Ravenna Township. This area is able to support a 10 MGD facility. It minimizes disruption to the natural landscape, and it's also the most efficient and effective use of the site. Further elevating our treatment structures will allow us to protect our infrastructure from the 500-year flood, and it also allows the treated effluent to flow by gravity to the Mississippi River. Wastewater will be treated using a variety of physical and biological treatment processes. Effluent will be disinfected by a UV system prior to discharge to the Mississippi. A life cycle cost analysis did determine that continued transport of solids to the Metropolitan Wastewater Treatment Plant for incineration is our most cost-effective solids management alternative. A 2-lane drive-through loadout facility would be provided to support increased efficiency of this practice. Odor control facilities will manage odors associated with the treatment process. We'll also have an administrative building with an attached maintenance shop, which will provide work for on-site work, and it will be designed to accommodate a variety of other workspaces. A life cycle cost analysis did determine that liquid waste receiving is not feasible at this location right now. However, the layout will accommodate space for future liquid waste receiving facilities should they become feasible for us at a later date. The new facility will have 2 access points. We'll have primary access to the site across from a local county road, and that's for traffic safety purposes. That entrance design will allow for stacking of multiple vehicles on MCES property, and it won't impede the flow of traffic on Ravenna Trail. We'll have perimeter fencing, entry and exit card readers with motorized gates, and surveillance cameras that will help MCES secure and monitor the property. Relocation of the Hastings plant opens opportunities to advance the council's environmental sustainability initiatives. Non-potable use of disinfected effluent water at the treatment plant can be maximized in order to reduce our reliance on city and groundwater wherever possible and also economically feasible. Some other examples of sustainable solutions that we have planned for this facility include energy and carbon efficient approaches like a high efficiency equipment, lighting, and building systems, a Tier 4 generator that could be used for standby power generation and demand response, and that gravity flow to the Mississippi. Additionally, this project is going to allow us to investigate and use drought-tolerant sustainable landscapes and also green infrastructure best management practices for stormwater. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Chad, and he can review with us the conveyance systems and decommissioning of the existing wastewater treatment plant.
Thanks, Heidi. So this is an aerial view of the existing wastewater treatment plant. The red box is the place where the proposed lift station is going to be on the site. The green piping would be piping that would be installed after the plant is decommissioned to get the city flow through the site to the lift station. The wastewater comes into the plant into 3 different locations, so you have to have a small little collection system to get it over there. The image on the right shows a similar size lift station that's actually in Hastings. So this should be something that the city is used to operating and maintaining. This is the overall general map of the improvements to the Hastings system. And the box in the orange is the existing plant, and the yellow dot is the lift station we just looked at. The station will pump into a force main to the south up to the top of the hill at 10th Street. The existing system in Hastings has a large trunk pipe that comes down, basically follows the railroad tracks on the east side of town, just east of Tyler Street. As it crosses 10th Street, that sewer is at an elevation where we can divert 90% of the total Hastings wastewater system flow straight to the new treatment plant by gravity sewer. This trunk sewer is shown in orange on this map, follows the 10th Street Ravenna Trail right away to the east. There's a planned pressure pipe as it crosses underneath Vermilion River. This pressure pipe or siphon will minimize the depth of pipe in the county right away and reduce the depth of flow as it enters into the plant. The treated water discharge to the Mississippi River is shown in the black dash line. Alignment will need to cross under the railroad tracks and Vermilion River. There's an outcropping of high land that in the middle, north of the river. We've taken some borings there, and there's extensive bedrock. And so the plan is for the system to be a closed system or pressure system. It will be fed by gravity at the plant through a head box, but it will basically function as a force main along the alignment. This has a couple advantages for our operations. It allows us to have very little access points, and the ones that are accessed are closed, like basically like a blind flange that can be removed and access the pipe. That'll keep sediment from the floodwaters of the Mississippi from entering into the pipe and causing issues with flow. Met Council took ownership of the existing plant in 1970. We entered into an agreement with the city at the time. That agreement stated that if the property ever ceased being a wastewater treatment plant, that the land would be reverted back to the city. So we have to have some sort of agreement to facilitate handing that property back over to them so they know exactly what they're getting. This is a conceptual plan on how we would demo the site. The portion on the left of the drawing, or to the north towards the river, is the lower lying ground that's within the floodplain. That portion we proposed to remove to either 4 to 6 feet below grade. We'd pop holes in the bottoms of the structures, make sure they don't retain water, and then backfill with clean sand. Portion on the south is portion outside the floodplain, which is most likely developable to some extent. So we propose to remove those structures down to the bottom of the footing so they don't impede any type of future development. Like I said, this is only a concept, so this is potential to change as we negotiate with the city. That concludes our presentation for Hastings. Welcome to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Heidi. At this time, I will open up the chat, and if anybody has any questions for Chad or Heidi, you can raise your hand now. Heidi, I do have one question for you. During your presentation, you mentioned that the new plant site consists of 221 acres, and you showed 10 acres would be required for the new treatment plant. So, what does MCS plan to do with the rest of the remainder of the property?
Sure. I believe Chad's actually prepared to answer a question like that if you'd like.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, right now, the most of that area is north of the railroad tracks, which is on the opposite side of where our treatment plant is. The plan is to keep that area in a natural state. We're going to develop what's called a natural resources plan for the area, possibly collaborate with some local agencies or government agencies on maintaining that land in a natural state. That's kind of up in the air right now, exactly how we're going to do that, but so it'll be determined before we start construction.
Great. Thanks, Chad.
Thanks.
One question came in the chat. Why is there such a large increase in the capital programs?
I can offer an answer for that if you'd like, Nanette.
Okay.
So we're seeing an increase in these next 5 years or so due to our larger capital projects that we need to get done. We only do work, obviously, that's needed to get done, but those larger projects were L32, construction of this wastewater treatment plant, construction of the Crow River wastewater treatment plant, which would be similar, a brand new facility, and a fourth incinerator at the Metro plant. When we look at that capital program, you can also see that we've kind of balanced those expenditures. So we're trying to keep them even. So you do see it jump up, but we're trying to keep it as even as possible through the next 5 years. And we've done that by scheduling those projects to occur at different times. So the expenditures aren't all hitting us all at once.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Anyone else have any questions for Chad or Heidi on the capital program or the new wastewater treatment plant in Hastings? And I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Heidi. So at this time, we are going to move into a break, a 5-minute break. We will reconvene back here at 10:20. We will see everybody then. Thank you. We're going to reconvene in about 1 minute. All right, well, welcome back to the second half of the 2022 customer workshop. I hope everybody had a minute or two to have a nice break and get something to drink. I'm gonna turn it over to Tim. Tim is gonna take us over through the FOG program, and Isaac will be talking about regs in the sewer. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tim Rostein. I'm an engineer with the industrial waste section of MCES, and I administer a bunch of permits and assist in addressing other issues, various other issues. And one of those issues is FOG, or fats, oils, and grease in the sewer. There we go. Sorry about that. Main issue with FOG is that it does not belong in the sewer system to begin with, and it creates significant difficulty and expense in removing it from the system and disposing of it properly. Generally, FOG is going to enter the sewer in a liquid form because it has been heated up and liquefied in some sort of cleaning process. And then it flows really nicely then with the water in its liquid form. The problem is that in the cooler, quiescent environment of the sewer, it can begin to solidify and then really start to create problems for us. In the internal plumbing of a building and in the city sewer lines, this solidifying can create blockages and backups, creating potential health and environmental hazards. Typically, FOG is not as serious an issue in our interceptor sewers because they are larger and they carry more flow than your average city line. However, as the picture you can see there shows, problems can happen. This was a slightly unusual case of a restaurant, which I will not name, that is directly connected to one of our interceptor sewers. And you can see in the green or the restaurant service line there, the arrow pointing, that's the connection right there, the connection line to our sewer. And over time, the FOG built up into that nice, lovely shelf there, which then eventually obviously had to be removed to prevent it from completely blocking our sewer and causing all sorts of additional problems. Generally, once FOG is in our interceptor system, there's a good chance it'll go through one of our lift stations, which simply put is a structure that pumps wastewater to a higher elevation. As you can see in the picture on the left there, it kind of leaves a nice coating on everything. It can also shorten the life of the equipment in there, potentially create odor problems, and definitely result in additional maintenance costs. As it moves along in our system, it will finally arrive in one of our wastewater treatment plants. In our larger plants, FOG is less of an issue, but in our smaller plants, it can create significant challenges. On the picture on the right there, you can see one of our plants received an above average amount of FOG, and it is being scraped off of our bar screen. The bar screen is designed to keep large objects from entering the plant. So this lovely mess then has to be placed in dumpsters and disposed off site. Fog that reaches the primary treatment plants or treatment tanks of our smaller plants will float on the surface and needs to be skimmed off and is then hauled to our largest treatment plant, the Metro plant in St. Paul. All of this fog removal creates labor, disposal, and transportation costs. So what can be done about this problem? If your facility has a grease trap or interceptor, it needs to be maintained properly. The frequency of maintenance will depend obviously on the nature of your flow and the size of the interceptor, but certainly often enough to ensure the efficient operation of that interceptor. Source control is also important. This will vary by facility and may require some creativity and employee training, but any steps that can be taken to keep grease out of the drains to begin with, for example, placing grease-laden waste in either trash or recycling receptacles instead of just blasting it with scalding hot water and sending it down the drain will help us a lot. Lest anyone feel left out of this discussion, even individuals can do their part in the home to keep grease out of the sewer. This can be done by placing greasy food waste in the garbage and never pouring any type of liquid grease down the drain. I thank you for your time, and I will now turn it over to Isaac Razor, who will talk about the problem of rags in the sewer.
Hello, everyone. My name's Isaac Razor. I'm an assistant manager in interceptor operations at the MCES. The interceptor department is the department that operates and maintains our collection system. Before I get started, hoping everyone can kind of see the blinds in my office behind me. The sun is shining today. I had to close my blinds before this presentation, so please get outside and enjoy some sunshine. We have not seen much of it lately. All right, back to business. Rags. So I got a general definition of rags in here. General term used to describe items such as paper towels, disposable wipes, tissues, napkins, washcloths, and other textiles. One thing not noted in there that we're seeing more of recently is rubber gloves. I think it's pretty straightforward that a lot of this stuff does not belong in the sewer, similar to Tim mentioning that the fog does not belong in the sewer. Rags also do not belong in the sewer. Similar to a lot of the things that Tim had mentioned, some of the added cost and labor and issues created by fog are created by rags in our collection system as well. Added CIP costs for rag screen / process equipment. So when we rehab a site or build a new site, mainly lift stations, we have to include bar screens or rag grinders. So pictured up in the top right, we have a bar screen that can be manually raked by our crews. The bottom right corner is a picture of rag grinders, which we also use. So those grinders grind up rags to a size which helps our pumps and other equipment process wastewater and keep it moving through the system. Not pictured is automatic bar screens. So we have bar screens for catching the rags, and then they're set up with mechanical equipment to be raked mechanically. All this stuff is extra costs when we're building and rehabbing our sites. Another added cost to the CIP projects is dealing with rags when we are conveying wastewater around our project. So wastewater never stops coming to us, and many of our CIP projects, we have to convey that waste around the area we're working on. That conveyance system has to be able to process rags. This comes at an extra cost as well. Added maintenance and labor costs. So if you have a bar screen, you need to rake it, and that is an added labor cost. If you have a bar screen or grinder equipment, you have to do maintenance on it and you have to repair it. That is also added labor cost. There's also added maintenance costs to pumps and other process equipment due to the next bullet point, which is premature failure of equipment. If you get a pump that's half ragged up for a couple of days, that takes some life cycle off the life of that pump. Emergency response due to rags plugging pumps and equipment. So we do have rags that make it through the bar screen, or we do have sites that we don't have a lot of rag issues, so we don't have equipment for it. But randomly we'll get a slug of rags that comes through. This can plug up pipes and other process equipment, and it can cause us to respond after hours and deal with interruption of flow of our wastewater. Related to that, there's potential spill to the environment due to rags plugging up pumps and equipment. We've had situations where it will take out the majority of the equipment at a site, and we need to respond and keep that wastewater moving so that it does not back up and create a spill. Finally, disposal cost is a extra added cost to dealing with rags. And one last thing to note for this slide is 50% of our lift stations currently have equipment that is for processing rags. That number will grow as we rehab and build new sites. I tried to move to the next slide and I don't know if it went.
Still seeing your first slide.
How about now?
Now I see it.
All right, thank you. All right, just a couple examples to share with everyone about some issues that we find in the collection system. These photographs are not pulled from the internet. These are from actual MCES crews dealing with rags in our collection system. I have a whole folder full of them. I tried to pick out a few good ones here. So all the way to the left are rags on one of our pumps, a submersible pump that we pulled out of a lift station. Really hard to see because all you see is a lot of things that shouldn't be in our system. Middle picture is a pump split in half, completely plugged with rags. And to the far right, we have rags removed from a check valve. Here's an example of a poster of things that we don't want flushed down the toilet, or we don't want to end up in our collection system or at our plants for that matter. I see there's a link on here for anyone who may want to use this material to help educate people in the communities. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to us to help with material or ideas for educating people out in the communities. We have worked with our communications department with coming up with some ways to do that. A lot of time we'll send out flyers, mail things out, or just stop in and have conversations with businesses. With that, I think that is my last slide.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Davis, and I work in water supply planning here at the Metropolitan Council. And I'm going to be talking with you today about the regional benefits of our water efficiency grants and the legacy amendment funds that we receive. So first I'll talk about our water efficiency grant program. This is a very successful program that we have had running for a number of years now. We had our first program was between 2015 and 17, and we are currently in our second version of the program, which runs through June 30th of this year. We have another version starting on July 1st of this year. The current version has 39 participating communities. And when we add up all the numbers thus far, what we come up to is $1 million of grants dispersed from MCES to these communities to help fund the replacement of devices with more water efficient versions of those devices. And that includes toilets that are EPA WaterSense certified, clothes washers that are U.S. Department of Energy Energy Star certified, and also irrigation controllers and spray sprinkler heads that are also certified under the EPA WaterSense program. And when you add up the savings in water from these efforts by these communities over time, you come up to a number of about 450 million gallons of water saved thus far. Probably more than that now, because this is obviously the program is still continuing, and these numbers are at least 3 months old now. So, and 8,000 devices replaced approximately. So it's been a very popular program, quite successful. The new version of the program will begin on July 1st, as I said. We'll have 37 communities that have chosen to participate in the program, and we will again have about $1 million to disperse to these communities. They do match the funds with 25% of their own funding in the current version of the program. So there is a buy-in, obviously, from these communities as part of their participation. So again, very popular program. We've had a lot of success with it. Another and a different kind of program that we have been conducting for some time now focuses on industrial and commercial water use in the metro area. About 125 million gallons per day of the water use in this area is categorized as industrial and commercial water use. There are businesses that are very interested in saving money by becoming more water efficient. These cost savings can be in the form of water savings if they're purchasing water from a municipality, or even if they have their own wells and they're pumping their own water. Of course, there are energy costs with that. Sewer charges for discharge, and of course, energy costs are also drivers because in a lot of processes, the water is heated. And of course, it's moved around in a plant through pumps oftentimes. These companies oftentimes also say that environmental stewardship is important to them and that they're eager to save money, but they're busy. They don't have enough staff or enough staff time to focus on some of these projects where the water savings can be realized, which is understandable. So to address that, MCES has been working with the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, or MNTAP. MNTAP was created in 1984, and we have been in partnership with MNTAP since 2012. So we're at a decade of partnership with this program. I'll give you just a quick overview of MNTAP. There's going to be a more detailed presentation about that coming next. But it's an organization that's run through the University of Minnesota that focuses on water and energy and waste reduction and efficiency. Of course, our focus here in this program has been under the water efficiency category. And as part of those efforts, we have been providing funding for summer internships for college students in engineering and science to work for a summer at a metro area business on a project that is focused on water efficiency. And we have had 38 of those summer interns that we have helped fund through last summer. So quite a number of them. And as you can see in our graph here, the water savings that have been realized through the partnership between MNTAP and MCES are pretty large. Through 2021, the cumulative savings are approaching 350 million gallons, which is a pretty large number. And when we look at the financial savings and the dollars saved through those efforts by those businesses, we're approaching $4.5 million. This coming summer, we will have another 5, 5.5 really interns that will be working on projects like this. So of course these numbers will rise, continue to go up. So the water efficiency savings, energy savings, financial savings are great things, and they're really the core of the program. But I think the part of it that I really like the most is actually the fact that we're helping train the next generation of engineers and scientists to focus on water efficiency. There's some photos here of some of the interns that we have funded over the past decade, and you can see there's some quotes there. This internship gave me the opportunity to learn practical skills and gain industry experience outside of the classroom. Another quote is the MnTAP internship was a great opportunity to learn and practice skills not taught in my engineering curriculum, such as communication, project management, and economic reasoning. I am super thankful for this experience. So when you think back in your own career, when you were a younger person and you hadn't worked in a business yet, you know, it was probably kind of a daunting idea to actually take those skills that you were learning in a classroom and apply them in a factory, in the industry, in a business. So this program through MnTAP is really a great way to help these students get their foot in the door in a business and learn how a business works and what it's like to spend your day, spend your week, spend your month working on a project inside a factory, something that they haven't done before in their careers. So it's pretty exciting stuff, I think. MnTAP can help you if you're a business through a number of ways. In our program, what they do is they help to develop and scope the projects with these businesses each summer. They finalize the agreements between MnTAP and the business. MnTAP hires, trains, and supervises the student interns. They coordinate a student public presentation at the end of the summer, which is usually presented on campus. It's a really great time to see what these students have done, and MnTAP does a great job of hosting a really good event. And they publish executive summaries of those projects in their annual Solutions magazine, which is a really well done synopsis of the things that have gone on in the past year. So we have had really great success working with MnTAP, and we're looking forward to continuing that over the next years. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Great, thanks, Brian. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Isaac. I wanted to go back to Tim and Isaac for questions and answers. There were some questions that came through the chat. I want to address those first, and then we can address the questions that came in for you, Brian, if that's okay. Tim, a question about fog. If fog does get down, like your personal work drain, is there something that you can suggest for safely cleaning it up?
Yeah, I gotta say I'm a little disappointed. I just got done saying don't do that, and people are asking how to clean it up after the. No, I'm kidding. If you're talking, I guess the short answer is it depends. Like in the house, if you somehow you dump a little bit down your drain, it's not going to be enough to affect our system. So your primary concern probably is just to make sure your drains don't clog up. So in that case, I would just say flush it down with a bunch of hot water. Now let's say at an industry, you got a 500-gallon tank, or assuming you should have secondary containment and all that. But anyways, like vegetable oil, if that were to rupture and somehow get to the sewer, then you're talking, a call to the duty officer, and then the city and or us can respond and, to try to recover that from the sewer. Everything in between there is kind of a little bit iffy because generally, I mean, the fog is a thing where it's part of, most of it's going to enter the sewer from cleanup operations, etc. So it's not really something you see as an accidental discharge a lot. So I mean, as far as, kind of once it's in there, right? But like I said, any large spill should be called into the duty officer, and then control measures potentially could be taken. by the city and or MCES. So I guess that's my shortest possible answer. I hope that answered the question well enough.
It does. Thanks, Tim.
Just don't do it. How about that?
Just don't do it. Thanks, Tim. Another question came in. The question was, how much of this comes from washed into storm systems? And I'm assuming they're talking about rags and other debris down into the sewer. And Isaac had chimed in. Isaac, would you like to talk about how our collection system is not combined?
Yeah, absolutely. So our collection system is completely independent of any local stormwater systems. A long time ago, a lot of sanitary and stormwater was combined, but that has been since separated for quite a long time. So should not be anything rag related in our system from a stormwater system.
Thanks. Another question for you and Tim. Which plants are having the most issues with treating the water with the increased fog? And is there something we can put into the pretreatment system to help this?
Do you want to take that one, Isaac? Or, well, I do know the pictures I used that was from the Hastings plant. Not to single anyone out, but there has been some increased fog showing up in what you'd call kind of isolated incidences where the plant will get inundated with a large amount of fog at certain times or whatever. And I know Blue Lake down in Shakopee has had instances like that too. Those are the two that come to mind first. Oh, what was this? And then the second part of the question was what?
Is there something that can be put into place into the pretreatment to help prevent any fog?
Like I said, I mean the main way you keep fog out of the sewer is, a grease trap, grease interceptor piece of equipment. Now generally that's not something you just kind of put in on a whim. It's a fairly significant piece of equipment, and generally those are in like a fast food restaurant will put it in when it's built or whatever, or should. But I mean, they can obviously be retrofitted to any situation, but it's gonna be something like that's gonna be reserved for an industry or a business that's producing a fog on an ongoing basis, or like I said, food preparation, things like that. And then as far as I guess I don't have anything to add to that. Sorry.
Tim, I can add a little bit to that.
Okay, sure. Please bail me out, please.
Yeah, as far as the plants go, I'm not really involved with it, so I don't know. But I know Tim mentioned Blue Lake. We have a lift station out kind of in that same collection system basin where we see a lot of it, so that makes sense. We typically see more grease in areas with a lot of restaurants. So I will mention that grease traps are great, and that's what they're designed to do, which is take fog out of or prevent fog from getting into our system, but they mean nothing if they are not maintained correctly or on a scheduled basis. And that's where we really run into a lot of problems is how do we educate people to come up with a maintenance program for those grease traps.
Great. Thank you. So before we move on to our last presenter, I do have one question for Brian. Brian, could you maybe touch on the different ways that the region benefits from having MnTAP summer interns work for local businesses?
Oh, yeah, certainly. There are many ways that these businesses benefit. As I said in the presentation, the training of the next generation of engineers and scientists to focus on water and energy efficiency is a really, I think, great thing that does benefit the region in the long run. A lot of these students end up working in the metro area in their careers, and by participating in our program, they have a background in water efficiency that they may not have had otherwise. I would say the other ways are much more direct. The water savings are a real thing, and so are the energy savings as well. Of course, they do have savings in sewer charges at sometimes, depending on how much water efficiency they realize, and depending on how the concentration or loading changes in their sewage, which of course is a function of whatever kind of process is going on at that industry. So the savings are a real thing, and I think another benefit is just the connection that we get with these industries. So it's another way that MCES can be of benefit to these industries and commercial establishments in the metro area. And they see that there's another thing that we can do to help them and funnel some of these Clean Water Land Legacy Amendment funds their way to help them do something that they may not have enough time to do on their own. And of course, the financial help is a nice thing too for them in terms of helping to fund the students' presence in their facility for the summer. So there are a whole bunch of great things in this program, and that's why I like working on it so much.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions for Brian, Tim, or Isaac before we move on to our final presenter? And I am not seeing any hands, and nothing has been inserted into the chat. So I'm going to move on to Daniel. I'll let you take control.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Daniel Chang. I'm an associate engineer with MnTAP, and I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the services and projects that we have ongoing. And I just also like to give a shout out to Brian Davis. Thank you so much also for just talking about MnTAP. And I think it's been a really great partnership on our end as well, really driving a lot of the work we do in the metro area on water conservation opportunities. So really fantastic partnership there. So briefly, I'll be talking about who we are, what's MnTAP, why should folks work with us, and then I'm going to be talking on a few opportunities, some topics on water opportunities. So wastewater loading reduction, water efficiency, and industrial chloride. So we are the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program, established in 1984 at the University of Minnesota in the School of Public Health. So we are an outreach and assistance unit for industrial businesses that provides pollution prevention and technical assistance for them. And we offer this at no cost to our clients, and we're able to do that because we are grant and partner funded. We are confidential and non-regulatory, so businesses can feel confident and assured that the information they share with us will not be released to third parties. And we provide our assistance in a variety of different ways, primarily through site assessments, interns, and teams. And additionally, we do have a variety of research and case studies and other resources that we provide on our website that we can link you with if we have incoming phone calls or inquiries. We do handle some questions on waste management best practices or even regulatory concerns or issues. Those may come in from time to time. We also run the Minnesota Materials Exchange Program, which is a little bit like a Craigslist for businesses, where you can list or view listings for different materials that you are seeking to get rid of. So from everything from paint to pallets, if you have it in excess or are looking to get rid of it, this might be one option for you so that you don't have to pay for disposal, but you can also see something that would otherwise be going to waste be reused, which is a nice thing. More on site visits. This is an opportunity for us to really sit down with you one-on-one now, but we do emphasize being able to go out in person to a facility and be with you, see the floor, see the operations and understand what's happening, and ask a lot of really basic and sometimes maybe seemingly obvious questions about what's going on. But it's we bring a fresh set of eyes to your facility and try to understand what some of the opportunities are for reducing or conserving water, energy, materials, raw materials, other resources, or conserving or reducing the output of different wastes. And so we try to drive towards facility-specific solutions that are feasible and provide you with the economic and environmental justification for making changes. Our intern program is similar to that type of structure where we try to work with you in developing those specific solutions. But again, we do provide obviously a student that is with you full time. And so that's a really nice way to have more fully developed and very fully researched recommendations that student can provide. And being on site full time means that they have the time to really dive deeply into the process and come up with either very solid and thorough understanding of the process and how it works, and provide you with those recommendations, or even bring unique ideas that you might not have had the time to consider or really look into. And so if you have different priorities that are keeping you from really chasing down on some of these maybe seemingly easy wins, an intern is a great option for businesses that feel like they have the room to improve, but don't necessarily have the time or bandwidth to make good on those opportunities. And our intern program is a big part of the results that we have every year. And so you can see that numbers there, but you can also see that we do have results in many different areas and categories. So solid and hazardous waste, water, energy, and of course the cost savings. And the intern program is a big part of that for us. And you can also see from the map there that our territory is the state of Minnesota. And so while much of our work is focused in the Twin Cities metro, we do try to get out as much as we can. And if your business is outstate, we are more than happy to make the drive out and come talk with you and visit and see what we can do. This slide just shows that we have both a variety of partners and funding sources. Of course, MCES and MPCA are our primary partners. And we also have a variety of different water projects that we have as well. So you can see that we have things from water conservation to particular wastewater projects, such as chloride reduction or nutrients, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, that we try to target specifically. This slide is essentially saying that source reduction is pollution prevention, truly. And while many businesses might be in more of the management category when it comes to wastes, we do try to push them and see if there are ways to move up from treatment or even energy recovery of wastes to recycling, or most ideally source reduction. And so if there are ways to really look at the root cause of waste, that's where we like to try to spend our time thinking about solutions that can address those root causes and prevent waste from occurring before it's being generated. And an example of that I'll share is an intern at a dairy products facility that we had a number of years ago. And so at this facility, there was a finished product that was being lost at the end of bottling and packaging runs. And you can see from this diagram that there was finished product that was being kept in a holding tank that would then be moved to a valve transfer point and then onward to a fill station. And then from there, it was filling their containers. But at the end of each run from this process, there was a considerable amount of product being left in the space that's highlighted in the red. that could not be recaptured and was essentially just being lost to the drain and going to the wastewater facility. And so the intern recommended that they use compressed air to push leftover product in those fill lines back to the holding tanks. And so from doing this, there was actually a considerable amount, 416,000 pounds of product being saved, which was equivalent to $100,000 in product value. And this was on top of additional benefits from the reduced strength charges that they were able to see. When it comes to water efficiency, there is quite a wide variety of different tools that we can look at and discuss with you. Everything from kind of the macro level scale mapping, looking at the facility, trying to identify and prioritize areas by their water usage, all the way down to more of a micro level. So looking at maintenance or management, what are the maintenance plans currently? What level of leaks are there? What can be done to address leaky or broken valves? Are there opportunities to automate? Or even looking at modifications. So are there ways that the process itself can be changed so that water isn't necessarily needed in the first place? And so these are all different areas and categories that we might talk with you about and when it comes to working with you on a water project. It's also nice to see that the cost of water is more than just the cost of water, which might sound silly, but it is true that there are additional inputs and processes that increase the value of water and help justify the need for water conservation efforts. And so you can see here that well water is very cheap. It only costs 7 cents per 1,000 gallons at one site that we're using as an example. But you can compare that to city water plus the sewer fee plus additional heat and softening that's being done. It's nearly $20 per 1,000 gallons. So that's about 2 orders of magnitude in difference. And so this is one thing that we like to try to take a look at as well as a way to really paint a fuller picture of what's going on and help justify any sort of investment that's needed when it comes to making changes. A very simple example that I'll just share is, again, in the context of an intern project that we had at a food processing facility. And this facility, like any food processing, had sanitation procedures. And so the intern noticed that there could be an opportunity with the nozzles, the spray nozzles that were on the hoses that operators were using. And so they measured the flow rates that they had and compared them to a low flow nozzle that was purchased and found that there was about a 30% reduction in the flow. And after running some trials with the operators who were satisfied with the lower flow nozzles performance, they were able to implement this and save about 40,000 gallons of water per year. And while this is a smaller amount, it's a nice example of how an intern is able to invest the additional time looking into what might be smaller things that a facility could overlook or might not have the time for, but can still add up in the long run. And also looking again at the cost justification, it's clear that there can be savings here and is worthwhile to implement. Shifting over now to industrial chloride, we'll talk a little bit about water softeners. So we had an intern last year that was focused on some water softener best practices. And what they found were the following 4 strategies: hardness settings, dosage settings, resin bed replacement, and conducting elution studies. And I'll be talking a little bit about those first 3. So when it comes to water softening, it's very important to understand how the water softeners control panel settings are set up. And so that's where the salt dosage and hardness settings come into play. So ensuring an accurate hardness setting essentially means verifying that the incoming water that's being treated is at the actual hardness that's being set on the control panel. If that setting is too high, then that means that the capacity of the softener is reduced and it's wasting salt. Essentially, it's going to start regenerating earlier than it needs to. And so you are going to be outputting more chloride from the brine that's being used to regenerate it. If the setting's too low, then you would risk outputting hard water since the regeneration cycle is not kicking on earlier enough, and it's not getting your adequate treatment. So the recommendation here is to sample the incoming water that you have and make sure that its hardness matches what's being set on the water softener. Lowering the salt dosage essentially means lowering the amount of brine used per regeneration, and you can clearly see from that would save some amount of salt and water as well. And there's some more finesse to that recommendation, but it is a very simple change to make once you know what the optimal amount of brine is. And then the last remark is resin bed replacement. And so it's good to note that a softener's resin capacity is lost at a rate of 1, 2, 3% every year. And so in the worst case scenario, after 10 years, you might be looking at about a 27% reduction from your initial capacity. And again, like any piece of equipment, resin ages. And so it has a lifetime. And this might mean that if you have an older water softener, it might be worthwhile to check in with your water softener servicer to run some diagnostics, conduct an elution study, see how its performance is, and basically make the determination if you should be replacing it, or if it can be cleaned out or otherwise rejuvenated. Just a couple last notes here. We do have this tool on our website, Industrial Water Efficiency Optimization. And so this is kind of a nice way for businesses that are curious to go on and see some of the suggestions that we've made for other businesses with water conservation in mind. And so you can search them by title. So, replace broken valves or fix leaks, and see what sorts of savings were estimated from that. And so you can see the link to this tool there. And then just a final plug, I'm currently leading a project with precision manufacturers and metal fabricators right now. This is a 3-year project where year 1 has been conducting informational interviews to understand what some of the sustainability best practices and ongoing challenges are with the industry. And right now we're in the round of technical assistance visits. And so there is some overlap here where it can be used for preparation of coolants, which are very important for successful cutting operations of metal. And so this could be one opportunity where we've seen with metalworking fluids, if there are strategies to conserve it, reuse or recycle it, that could be significant savings for businesses. But we're very open, again, to other opportunities if there are things with energy efficiency, compressed air, solid waste reduction, you name it, we can certainly take a look. And lastly, this is just an additional web page where you can see the list of different publications that we have. And probably the most relevant for everybody is going to be our Source e-newsletter. And so that's a monthly email that goes out to businesses, and it's a great way to just be connected with us and see what ongoing projects and opportunities and activities we have. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for your time, and appreciate the time to answer any questions that we might have.
Thanks, Daniel. One question did come in through the chat. Are there any MCS industrial permit holders networking opportunities available for the exchange of ideas, solutions, and experiences?
Let's see here. Industrial permit holder networking opportunities. That's a really great question. I would say that perhaps one of the I guess forefront networking opportunities that comes to my mind would be the intern symposium that happens at the end of every summer. that's a really nice way to showcase some of the work that different MCES customers are doing. And it is has been virtual for the past couple of years, although hopefully we might be tending to more of an in-person format. So I can definitely say that that's one way to kind of see what ongoing activities are happening and some of the best practices that interns are making.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. Does anyone else have any questions for Daniel or any of our presenters before we give it over to Tina to close out today? Tina, I'm not seeing anything, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nanette, for your facilitation today. And I would like to thank you all for joining us today and being a part of our workshop. I know schedules are really busy, and we truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to keep current on our program and to offer us your feedback. If you can spare a few minutes, right now after we close, Jamie has placed a link to a survey in the chat window. Please take that survey and tell us what you thought about the workshop. Your opinion really matters to us. And again, if you have any questions that arise after this workshop, you can either pass them along to your permit engineer, to me, or to Jamie. She manages our IWPP email address. So with that, I thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your week.